So I think we can start. Unfortunately, we don't yet have any NC reps, but hopefully soon. And I hope, Janis, you can hear us. Yeah, perfect. And then, well, first of all, my name is Iida. I'm part of the board of BNC, and I'm going to be moderating this discussion. Hopefully, mostly you do all the talking, and I'm just here asking some questions and maybe some comments.
Okay.
And for the NCs, or Nora or Maria, if you want to type in questions to the chat, just let us know who the question is directed to. Is it directed to all of the candidates or just one individual person? And try to make the questions as concise as possible and try not to include many questions in one, since we try to keep the answer time to around 1 minute. So I was thinking we should start with a round of introductions. So each of you can introduce yourself. And for this, you have 2 minutes. And after that, we can move on to the questions. And then you each have around 1 minute to answer. And we will start each round with a different person starting. So everybody goes in a nice order. And after everybody has said what they want to say, other candidates can make comments, questions, remarks based on the other answers. And also if we have some remarks or further questions on the chat, we can focus more if there are some particular things that are of interest. I try to make it so that this is about an hour. So hopefully we'll keep it there and have some nice discussions. So first, the introduction, and one main thing that you're excited to be working on if you're elected to the GB. So if maybe Lejla could start this round.
Sure, with the introduction. So my name is Lejla Voloder. I'm 23 years old. I am currently living in Dresden, Germany, and I am studying at the Technical University of Dresden. I am studying civil engineering, and basically my national committee is European Youth Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was one of the founding members of our committee. So I have been involved with EYP since 2013. From then on, I have worked on various positions. I have also been on the national board as the vice president for public and corporate relations. And I have been actively involved in over more than 30 projects. But I would say that I've taken a break from the involvement in the National Committee in the last 2 years because I've changed my location, and I also kind of felt like I've done all the things that I wanted to do, and also that the younger members should be given an opportunity to learn and to try something new. And actually, I really never left the desire to be involved with the European Youth Parliament. So when I saw that there's a position for governing body, I thought, why not? It seemed like a perfect thing to put all of these skills and experience to use and to take on this challenge and to just try something new. So yeah, that's basically it for start.
Thank you. And maybe then Janis, would you mind going second?
Yeah, so hello, also from my side, sorry for the delay. I'm Janis, I'm from Germany. Currently I'm living in Berlin, but I'm also not in Berlin at the moment, but I'm on a work trip. So for EYP, I started in 2011. I have been, for the first 2 years, I have not really looked into all the opportunities that EYP has. I kind of got stuck as a delegate, fortunately that changed. I was very active with organizing, so I've had organized several times, and later I joined the BNC Board for 2 years, serving as a board member first and as a vice president second. Yeah, and since I've left the board, that is 2 years ago, I've also started to look into opportunities beyond, which has been council work, but also various positions as official. Outside EYP, I'm studying history and public communication or publishing, and I've worked as a freelance for 4 years now in the field of education of young people, political education. Yes, so that would be for my introduction. And one exciting thing to work on would be actually developing the future strategies for NCs, because I think I wouldn't have said that half a year ago, because it really sounds dry, but I've done it with one NC when I visited them and did it for a weekend, and it was very exciting, very interesting to see how things can develop from like an empty paper to a nice ideas and to nice ideas for strategy.
Thank you. And then Ignacio.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Ignacio, but everybody everybody around, my friends and everybody in EYP knows me as Iggy. I'm an EYPer since 2013, originally from Spain, but I'm currently living in London, just moved around a month ago, and I'm working for the UK government here as a statistician. So in EYP, I've been participating as in many different positions, both chairing, media, and delegate, and organizing as well. And then I've also been part of the EYP Spain board for a little bit over 2.5 years. So I was secretary of the board for around 8 months, and then I was a president for 2 years of the national committee. Then after taking a break, I was part of a new position that came up in Spain, which is called the Teachers Managers, which was in charge of making sure that teachers had their needs and all of their worries like safeguarded. So that was a very interesting job that I did for a year and a bit, until last September. And currently I have been thinking about what would be my next step inside EYP. And when I saw the same thought as Lejla had when I saw the possibility of joining the GB, I thought it could have been a great step up and a great opportunity for me to take. And in general, one thing that I would be very excited to work on is not only the development of the new strategy, but also making sure that through analyzing the previous international strategy, we can sort of create some success factors that can tell us if a national committee or if the EYP network as a whole has been able to complete the different objectives that they set themselves 4 or 5 years ago. So that would be the thing that I would be most excited about. And also it comes really close to me because I participated in the writing of the NC strategy, the NC long-term strategy. So I think that it will be interesting to see how other committees have tackled their different strategies and how in the past and how they will in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you for all the three of you. I will ask a few more questions just to get to know you a bit more, and then I see we also have some questions for Nora regarding the GB as a body. So just tell us one thing you have done in EYP that you are the proudest of doing, and just a 1 minute short answer. And when you're ready, Janis, you could start this round.
I find it very difficult to point out one thing. I think in general, looking back, just imagining myself as a person like 8 years ago, and yeah, seeing other people being in positions like board, GB, whatever, and just not having thought of that this is possible. So that's something I don't know if I'm proud of, but I find it remarkable. But if I really have to point something out, is I really think the last session I've organized, a forum in Germany, made me quite proud, even though I was not very satisfied with everything. But we tried a lot, and I think trying and maybe also failing in some parts is a nice thing.
Thank you. And Iggy, would you like to go?
Yeah, so probably the thing that I'm most proud of during my time in EYP was when I worked for the National Committee Board. During some years, EYP Spain has developed an internal structure that is capable of making sure that the members participate in different procedures, and there is some sort of democratic internal structure that allows members to vote and participate in the different changes that the National Committee goes through. But there was one particular change that I'm very proud of, is when the board that I participated in created a new piece of sort of internal law that allowed people that did not participate in our sessions to also participate in EYP. EYP Spain and other national committees tend to be a little bit selective and elitist in the way that they incorporate members into their national committees. So it was very interesting as well to make the NC participate in the process of making these new rules and these new norms. But it was something that in the end has provided us with a great increase in human capital in the National Committee, and has also allowed us to reach further than what we could before.
Thank you for this very concrete example. And then Lejla.
I think I actually am really proud of that the term that I was in in the board of my national committee. We have organized the biggest number of events, and we have established a new office in our country. So we had at that time 5 offices in different cities. And basically we have raised the biggest amount of funds in previous years. So by that time it was 3rd year since we started. But to be honest, I think there is one moment that I always recall as special, and it's a moment that I was personally proud of myself. It's basically 1 year after we started as a group of 15 individuals with this idea to create European Youth Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have done a lot of things, but I was never given an organizational position. And also another year after that, I was only involved as a delegate in the organization. And basically I have applied on different positions, but never gotten the opportunity to do anything. And I was proud of basically on myself in that moment, because I've decided to just stick to the organization and work even harder until I was given an opportunity to organize an event. And it actually took a lot of patience, because I was only seen as a delegate and nothing else, although I really wanted to do more and to basically give a better effort in further developing our organization.
Thank you. It's nice to see that there are a lot of questions coming in through the chat. So I think we can start going through some of those. First, I would like to start. I'm not going in order, but I will take a question from Dionysus that since you are all have been active on NC level, what aspects of your previous EYP history do you think that help you in starting to think about EYP as a more of an international level and not just on NC level, but just, as a big picture? And I think it's this time it's Iggy's turn to start.
Yeah, so I think that, so initially the first point that made me think a little bit outside of the box in terms of what EYP could do was when with the same experience that I was talking about, was the point when I asked myself and the board asked itself, who are the people that we are not reaching? And then that thought also clashed coincided at the same time when the BNC meeting was held. So I went to a BNC meeting and then realized how heterogeneous the EYP arena was, and how the different structures and members were organized in the different NCs. So that made me really realize the different structures and how important it is for the GB to understand different internal structures that the NCs have, and how that can affect their development, and how sometimes we think that a one-size-fits-all approach can certainly solve a short-term problem, but however, how that particular BNC meeting, although it may seem like a little bit of a silly reasoning, how that BNC meeting made me realize how that BNC meeting made me realize how the heterogeneity of the EYP structures is important to be understood.
Thank you. And then I think it's Lejla's turn.
Yes. So as I previously mentioned, we had 5 offices in our national committee, so regional offices, different cities. And I think working with different cities and people in different cities basically gave me a lot of experience in terms of related as a distant working and communicating with people nonstop to organize projects. And I think it's really one of the things that I've learned during this process is that communication is the key in making sure that all the things that need to be done are done and that people know what to expect. So I think this experience would help me also if I'm elected to be a member of the governing body in terms of communicating with different national committees, making sure that their needs are heard and that the things that they would like us to focus on, so we know what should we do and what strategies are needed to be put into place.
Thank you. And then Janis.
I think what helped me a lot with understanding processes of working together on developing something new or from scratch was the set forum I was head organizing, because it was where a lot of different people involved. We had to set ourselves a high aim of involving the leadership a lot. We had a leadership meeting, and but yeah, in the end it turned out that not everything went the way we wanted, and I think that was, or we found that it was also a lot for the reason that you have to explain things again and again and again until you can really reach a common understanding, and you cannot just assume that if you explain something everyone is on the same page, and if you use certain words everyone is on the same page. And I think that works for the EYP as a big organization as well, because we have different understandings of what outreach is, even though we have a common definition on it. And the same is for alumni, the same is for welfare, etc., etc. Just because we have rules and just because we come up with new ideas and whatever policies, doesn't mean that this is going to be reality. So I think that's a very important part. And I must say, I think what will help me the most is something that isn't related to EYP at all. It's mostly my experience with different youth organizations and with working in the educational field. With just this week, I have 4 different seminars, and every day there's a new group of people I haven't seen, I haven't talked before, and we have to like get something done until the end of the day. And I think that's very interesting and challenging as well.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can now move on to a little bit more GB focused questions. And so as of now, looking from outside in, what would you wish that the GB did differently, if there are such things? So what would you like being done differently, or some things to be changed? And I think it's Lejla's turn to start this time.
Basically, telling this from my own experience, I feel that there is a discrepancy between the governing body and the members of the national committee. I think a lot of people who are involved with the EYP are not clear and familiar with exactly the work that the governing body does. And I think that there should be a better approach to the members of national committees, so that basically governing body has a better sense of what the national committees need and expect from them, and how they could possibly help them. So in this sense, I'm talking about basically not only members of the national boards, but members who are actively involved within EYP. I think there should be more efforts put into place to make sure that the governing body is connected to everyone and being able to respond to the needs of different members.
Thank you. And then I think it's Iggy's turn. Am I right? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So in my perspective, I think that there are 2 aspects that need to be changed. First of all, it's this idea of proximity, that we see the GB a little bit like on top, although it's not their desire, and it's clearly been the way they really wanted to work. It's to get closer to national committees and get closer to members. And I think that is a point that it obviously is very hard, but working on the external communication on the GB is very important to make sure that as Lejla, like adding on to what Lejla was saying, making sure that NC's opinions are considered not only in terms of their top structures or their top representatives, but also their members. And connecting to this, I think that the GB should focus on a more participative approach. Sometimes, although the expected participation might be low, it's not bad to register bad results in terms of participation, and making sure that we retain and we get the opinion from national committee members. It's also very important, maybe through polls or different groups of members that make us have an overall idea of what the average EYPer thinks of particular areas of participation in EYP, where it could be sessions or it could be structural participation as well. So I think that those 2 ideas are very important. So the external image, making sure that it's a close and close to the members and close to MCs, and also making sure that they provide a participative playing arena for everybody.
Thank you. And then Janis.
So for me, it's 2 things as well. Actually, I think there has been actions by the governing body to reach out to single members of the network. I remember a survey that has been sent out, which was just about every individual's experience in the EYP, which I liked, but I think what was missing, or what is missing from time to time, is coming back to that, coming back to the members and telling them what happened with what they have conducted in the surveys, and where is the governing body going. A lot of communication is going through the NCs, which are the main target group of the governing body, clearly. But I think also the governing body should be a bit more self-confident and do kind of their own PR. And I think that can be done quite simple. It doesn't have to explain everything, but giving examples from time to time where the governing body think the network could go. And this leads me to the second part. I just have seen, and I think
Janis lost his connection. Hopefully we will have him back soon. Let's see. Yes, I think he will go out and hopefully come soon in, so so he can finish his thought on this matter. But let us move on. As all of you talked about NC support, and there was a good question from Lika, and there is Janis. So before I ask this next question, you can finish off what you were saying before.
Yeah, sorry, my internet just said that it was too long, maybe. So the second point was basically, yeah, just thinking outside the box and bringing up questions that should be raised, to just think of what could we do differently, what have we done the last 30 years, but we never really thought, is there actually an alternative to that? And yeah, I think the GB should be the think tank for that, to put out these ideas, not to decide everything, obviously, but to, yeah, start discussions like that.
Thank you, and good to have you back. And so the next question is from the chat, from Lika. It's actually related to what you all talked about in with the previous question related to NCs, and she wanted to know what kind of individual support you would like to see given from the GB to the NCs, and how would you see it being developed, and is there a need to change it, or do you like it as it is? And this time we will start with Iggy.
Okay, so in general, I'd say that the general structure, maybe it's not a matter of what the GB does. I think the GB, at least from my time being part of the NC board, does reach out and tries to contact the NC, but sometimes it is hard, and sometimes it is difficult to see that interest from the national committees to participate in the Skype calls that that the GB organizes, or the regional clusters, that meetings that sometimes are organized. But I think it is the way forward, and it probably by engaging more closely and in a more constant way in time, maybe we can create a stronger relationship with MCs. Apart from that, I'd add that there are other tools that also make us understand better what are the needs and that MCs have, particularly the EYP census survey. When I had to complete it back in 2016, I think it was, it served me very well to also think about the internal structure and the outcome that came from my national committees, and I think that it is a great tool. Sorry about the noise. It is a great tool for the GB to understand the internal structures of the NCs and how the GB can help the NC in the end.
Thank you. And next up, Janis.
Yeah, so I can agree with Iidi on the part of the communication. I think there is a lot of offers. What maybe is lacking is the actual work on the problems, providing tools that are needed. And I think for now we have a lot of different structures for that, working groups, councils, task forces. We have also consultants, etc., etc. So yes, NCs could reach out there and could probably get what they need. Though I think following the cluster calls, for example, I think there can be a more clear linkage to the needed tools by introducing the possible partners into those calls. And an idea I had was to even make it more one-on-one, would be NCs that have similar problems. For example, they're struggling with their board structure. All of them, maybe like 6, 7 NCs, they come one day before BNC meeting, they come into the BNC meeting anyway, so it wouldn't be that much of more costs. It would be just a day more. They would come and would be getting an extra training on that by maybe a council that often feels like, okay, I'm producing something, I'm sending something to the BNC list, I'm putting it on the member platform, but will ever someone use it? Do I ever get feedback on it? So like putting those people into one room and letting them help each other in getting feedback and also in getting what the tools they needed, and of course the governing body can also put in their help in the certain areas they feel confident in.
Thank you. And then Lejla.
I think when it comes to the communication between the governing body and the individuals, one great way to communicate is through social media. I think that's already something that's been done, and I think it needs to receive further support and development. I also agree with Janis. Every opportunity there is for a physical meeting, getting feedback from certain national committees, talking about problems, talking about further strategies is a useful one. I also think that the effort and the initiative should come from the governing body side, because to be honest, I think national committees are very often too busy with their own problems and facing a lot of challenges within their national committees, so they cannot really focus on the, so to say, bigger picture. So I think that approach should be initiated from the side of the governing body, and also making sure that it's not just something that it's done, and basically that feedback needs to be used for changes, and to make sure that there's a point behind the communication and behind the feedback that the national committees are giving.
Thank you. And there were a few questions on the chat about the future of EYP's core activities, which are the events. So Nora asked, how do you envision the future of selections in EYP? Should we keep it as session-based selection process as it is now, or more of an open platform on discussions and European civic education? And then to build on that, and do you have any ideas for any future events of EYP, thinking in the long term, not just in the next 2 years, but maybe in the next 20 years, what kind of events would look like? and how EYP's events would look like in that time. So so you can take some time to think about it. So first, the future of selections in EYP, and then what future events of EYP would look like in the long run. And this time we will go with Janis first.
So with the selections, it's actually, as I said, one of the kind of holy cows we have probably in our organization. And while I congratulate the idea of also talking about that, I think we have to see that in the various NCs with very different situations when it comes to the selections. I think some NCs already have a lot of events that are not selection based anymore, or have developed their member base, their participant base away from school selections, while others haven't at all. So I think, yes, there should be a future where way more participants are originating from events that are not based on selections. While I also think probably we will keep them still for a while. I think there's still, on the other side, a lot of things that can be done about the selection itself. I've done that in the last 1.5 years when I've head of jury several times, together with the NCs, thinking about do actually juries always have to be so judgy? Do they have to be so distant from delegates? Aren't they maybe also another group of young people that help delegates to find their spot in the organization, their potential whatsoever? And for the future events, I like one of my three main pillars from my candidacy is the aspect of empowerment and innovation. And I mentioned the forum I've organized last year, and I think there is a lot already going on, but there's a lot of potential for other events we're not even considering now, or not doing on a regular basis, like panel debates, interesting ones actually. Maybe, I don't know, other ways of youth camps where you have really kind of like only team building and like coming up with doing a project, creating something together, doing a community project. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ideas, and I think we should actually work into that direction. The only question which I always have when thinking about that, and that's actually also included in my manifesto, is that we kind of have to discuss what is the aim behind it, what is our mandate as a youth organization. If we started with, or now we're still with education as our core principle, if we go into more of a platform direction, I think it's also, yeah, questionable. If we give more room to political debates, yeah, opinions, how we do that, how we do it also in comparison to other organizations that are doing similar things, like the European Youth Board. That's the question, we should discuss it. I think there's a lot of interesting things that wait for us, but we should also see our barriers and what identity we will have in the end.
Okay, thank you. And then Lejla.
I think when it comes to the selection of the delegates, I don't see why we couldn't try out both approaches, that is selecting delegates from the sessions and also having an open platform in terms of, let's say, having a certain number of places that would be available for anyone to apply. And for example, this would be from 10 to 20 candidates. And in that case, we could also evaluate and analyze afterwards if this brings better participants in our events. And I also think one of the one of the things that all NCs should work on is promotion and media presence and branding of EYP within their countries. So this way they would attract more people towards events and also candidates that are very qualified, so to say. When it comes to the future of the EYP events, I don't think anytime soon it will change from what it is now. I think, of course, if there is an opportunity, certain formats should be tried out. For example, like Project Understanding Europe, we had in our national committee and we implemented it and we had a great success within schools. And I think it was a great way of introducing EYP to students. It's a shorter version, shorter format that can be done in one day. It doesn't require so much time or funding. And it also brings value to promotion of EYP. I think that's something that it's a great example of not, so to say, not non-standard EYP event, and I think maybe in future we'll see more of those. And then again, with time, we can analyze if such events are bringing more value to the network.
Thank you. And then Iggy.
Yeah, so this is something that I've heavily been working on in EYP Spain, and it definitely creates a massive debate on the idea of selection. So it clearly is something that creates great differences, and there are many different schools, we can say, inside EYP. However, I am of the school that EYP should transform itself into an open platform for everybody to participate. We've seen not only during our time as juries, but also in every country, we see that there are particular schools that always succeed, and there must be certain factors that do help those schools succeed that cannot be controlled by the individual students. Hence, I think that we should, although it is something that obviously the NCs have the sovereignty to choose what kind of method they want in order to incorporate members into the NC, I think that we should move on and into less selective events. And the transformation in the long run that I think that EYP needs is moving towards more regional events. So ideally, if we think about not only 20 years, but let's say 50 or 100 years, would be to have events almost in village size, so that every village in a way could have its own EYP event. Or obviously this is completely utopia, but it could be the general idea that we should approach, making sure that everybody has the chance to participate in an EYP event close to their house. So I think that's the main, and in the end, EYP could transform itself into a more educational platform in order to learn how to politically organize yourself. What are the different political tools that you have close to you that make you participate in the society that you live in? It could be through sessions, but also, as Lejla mentioned before, it could be through programs like Understanding Europe. But in general, I think that the transformation should go from the larger, that we tend to focus a little bit on EYP, so we really focus on the international session, the flagship event, and more into what are the needs of the particular students in our countries in order for them to teach them or to show them the different political tools that they have at their hand.
Thank you. Taking another question from the chat from Matthew. He wanted to know about how would you develop the branding of EYP and raise the profile of EYP. And I read in between the lines from the Brexit comment that also with EYP has a lot of countries who are not part of the EU. How could we distance ourselves from the EU and be seen more as a European organization? And also the branding of not just outreach to new members, but in terms of decision makers and so on, to and other organizations to see as and recognize as an organization. And this time it's Lejla's turn to start.
I think a great example for this was participation at the World Economic Forum. I think this really gave so to say, a great branding for European Youth Parliament Network. And I think it's something that we should continue to work on, to be present, not only in terms of events that we organize, but also promoting what is the aftermath of our events. I think that's something that's very often forgotten. After we finished with organizing a certain event, we simply move on. But it's really important to showcase that work, if possible, to get in touch with the local authorities, local governments, and just to voice out our opinions as youth, because we are an organization for youth, led by youth. I think it requires a lot of work and time, and it's all about consistency, making sure that there is a media presence throughout the year, not only in certain times and not only for certain events. It requires a lot of hard work and a lot of strategies, not only we can talk about social media, but also through traditional media, because I think really through traditional media you can be seen as more serious, because social media would be a better approach when it comes to candidates, I would say, but when it comes to creating a bigger picture and this EYP brand image, I think traditional media is something really we should also focus on, so that basically an EYP term becomes famous and understandable for most of the people.
Thank you. And next up, we have Iggy.
Yeah, so I think that it is something that we've definitely faced. I'm 100% sure that almost all NCs have seen themselves in appearing in some sort of media outlet and being told that EYP is a pro-EU organization, when it's something that it is not the case. And it is something that I think that we should really focus on, is when we talk to our potential members or when we participate in sessions with other delegates, it is very important that we emphasize the idea that we are an educational platform that tells you what are the political structures that are around you and tends not to position itself in favor of others. Through social media, we could do that, maybe putting more focus instead of the events, I mean the particular output that we put forward. Also showing in general the main educational platform that EYP is. And particularly, for example, through Understanding Europe, again, insisting on this, it is the perfect, I think, tool to show that EYP is not here to show you how the wonders of the EU or the wonders of the European countries, but also it is a tool to show you what are the, as I said before, what are the political tools that are around you, what is a parliament, and what is the main aspects that make you participate in your political life, instead of focusing more particularly on being pro one side or pro one other. But we tend to be masked under that, and it really takes a lot of work, as Lejla said, to change this perspective. But I think that with a lot of work, talking to media outlets and being very strict on what they say about us, but also to politicians and top civil servants, we need to be very specific on the main objectives that EYP has, and maybe change our charter and our internal policy to make sure that this is very clear.
Thank you. And then Janis.
So I've thought about if we wouldn't talk about the EYP anymore as an European youth organization, what would be actually the words we would use instead? And I think what actually the values behind the European idea are like transborder cooperation, critical thinking, what also Iggy talked about, the things that happen in our events and that happen with the young people that come to the events. And I think maybe we should put that more into the focus. So it's not about the label, but about the content which is actually inside. So I think that would be important. I wouldn't change a lot about the rest of the EYP, because I think it's that what we're doing is what we should do. But yeah, maybe it would be a point of trying to a bit of avoiding discussions like that. So talking mostly about yeah, as I said, the values, and where I maybe would put more of an effort or more of a focus is what are actually the results of our work, on what or we as an organization that helps doing the societal change. Yeah, and I think that's something that can be very small and still very impressive. Whenever I think about it, and I've also talked in events about when I was asked what is actually this EYP and what is the result of it. When I just check my WhatsApp or check my my Facebook Messenger, and I see or look through with whom I have been in touch, not only about EYP as an organization and any like work stuff, but also friendships and everything. That's very massive, very interesting, and to understand the world not being split into countries, split into okay, I'm from France, I'm from Germany, I'm from Italy. So I think that's something really, really massive, because if you talk to parents, grandparents, that online societal change, so to say, in our events, and the young people that are spread over Europe, they continue with it, and I think that should be in the focus. And yeah, as I said, the content and not the label.
Thank you. And then switching gears a little bit in this discussion, the new international strategy of is coming up. The GP is preparing it. What you see as the core pillars of the strategy, and due to time, I would ask you to limit your core principles or pillars to maximum of 3. So anywhere from 1 to 3 core pillars you would want to see in the new international strategy. And this time we are going to start with Iggy when you're ready.
Yeah, so I think there are the 3 pillars that I would include would definitely be outreach and regional participation, together with the development of non-selective events. So adding on to what I said before, so making sure that there are different tools for MCs to develop closer participation to smaller groups and underdeveloped, underprivileged groups, so making sure that they are reached, together with the incorporation of different projects, or giving national committees the tools to incorporate new projects or innovative projects that can help outreach more schools. So that could be, those are 2 pillars probably in one, so outreach and the use of innovative ideas in order to help this outreach objective. And then finally, I'd say that one of the core things that should be tackled is internal participation, not only from an international perspective, making sure, or trying to make sure that members and volunteers are participative in the different processes that the EYP is working on, and making sure that the members are capable of delivering these transformations, but also in terms of the NCs. Can the GP make sure that NCs transform themselves into more participative organizations? So that probably would be my 3 aspects to incorporate in the international strategy.
Thank you for a very concise answer. Moving on to Janis. So what would be your max 3 core things in the international strategy?
So the first one would be strategic development and capacity building. because I think there is an opportunity for BNC to develop in that field they feel most relevant to them, and you should provide the necessary tools for that. The second would be knowledge management, which is actually quite related to that. I think there's a lot of knowledge in the network and a lot of work that every day is redone, even though there is already something existing about it, which is also a nice thing for everyone who's doing that, because it's still a learning process, what we're doing. But I think there's also areas where it's not necessary. And the last aspect is the aspect has two, as I said.
Sorry, I have to stop you. The connection was a bit slow.
Yeah.
So could you repeat that last part, what you said? Thank you.
For the empowerment part, it would be twofold. One is the aspect of connecting what we're doing with stuff which is happening outside the EYP. So helping young people to become active citizens, and the other way around, to get people who are still out there into the EYP, which would be basically the outreach. So I'm not going to go more in details because that has been mentioned already.
Thank you. And then Lejla.
I think when it comes to the international strategy, I would like to see definitely, first of all, development of the national committees, so strategies towards the support and development, especially that are needed for young national committees and national initiatives. So I think that's a really important point. Second thing would be media and communication, in terms of providing tools and kits for the entire network in terms of media and communication, because I think that a lot of NCs are still struggling within this aspect. And the third one would be participation, basically participants' welfare, so to say. There's always minimum measures implemented to make sure that all participants are, so to say, taken care of at each and every EYP event.
Thank you. As we have still some minutes left to go, so if you still have any questions, you can write them in the chat, and I try to have time to ask them. But do remember that there is still then chance to ask questions on the member platform. Yes, I will move on to the question posted on the chat, and it's about the councils and restructuring the councils, but I would like to maybe expand on it a little bit and include task forces in it as well, and maybe other ways to develop volunteer participation in international governance. So how would you like to see it be developed? And this time we will be starting with Janis. So once you're done, we can start with that.
So one being the work is done remotely, but we have
Sorry, I need to stop you again. Your connection is quite bad. Maybe if you try without the video, maybe that would help the connection.
So I think the classic strategies we have there would also apply here. no.
I think Janis' connection is bad again, so we will come back to him. But then, Lejla, what are your ideas on restructuring the councils and so on?
I think it's a complex problem that needs to be analyzed in terms of what has previously been done. But I think one of the problems is remote work, and also within that communication. And for me personally, I think the majority of problem comes from setting expectations in terms of the work that needs to be done. So I think that should be the focus on, regardless of how these councils are divided and organized. I think it's very important to make sure that the expectations are set and clear in terms of both sides of the communication, so both of from the governing body and also the working council. I think that communication is also a big and important point in terms of having constant communication from both sides to make sure that things are going smoothly. And I think because if there isn't a direct channel between those two, there will be problems for sure that will arise.
Thank you. And now, as we have Janis back and his connection is working, so we will return back to Janis for his answer and then end with Iggy's turn.
Yeah, maybe we should also do something about internet connection in Germany. But coming back to the question, so I think there is, as I said, three main problems, which is firstly the remote work. Secondly, that we have a lot of people involved that are still in NC boards or in other roles, so that is actually an adding responsibility for them. And in the priorities, it might be the least. And lastly, or the last part, I want to go in more detail later. So for the second part, well, that's maybe we have to talk about more what the councils or the task forces, etc., what they're doing, and if it's possible to do it besides. But I will also talk about that with the last part. For the remote work, I think there is maybe more possible to be done. What has been done now in terms of like motivating people to do their stuff, even though they cannot meet every day. I mean, there is a lot of in the network that doing this every day, and I think we can just see if we maybe have missed out strategies that are already there, which can be done. I don't know, working Skypes, stuff like that. I know it from my own council that we only didn't really use opportunities to go around this gap of motivation by just trying different kinds of cooperation, online and offline. But the last part is the most important for me. I think now the structure kind of leads to relatively unrealistic that are in the councils feel maybe missing the reward of their work and missing purpose for their work. The thing is, you're kind of sitting at home and then you're producing something, then you're sending it to the BNC, or you're putting it on the member platform, or you even, maybe you're presenting it on the BNC meeting, or not, I don't know. But it's not really, you don't see something changing. You don't really talk to someone using what you're doing. And I think that might lead to people not putting too much effort in the work. So as I said before, I think an idea would be to bring the people that are in the council more into the position of presenting what they have done to the NCs that are in need of exact these tools. For example, in trainings, summer academy, it could be an extra day for BNC, just bringing them together so you have like a nice atmosphere and also a positive event around it. And secondly, maybe just also sizing down what the councils are doing. So if there is a need coming up from several NCs for a certain tool that needs to be done, then putting people together to create this task, so to say, it would be a task force for 4 months, and if it's done, it's presented, people are happy, NCs are happy, and then do something new, and maybe go away from structures that incorporate a lot of different things at the same time.
Thank you. And then Iggy?
Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat all of the stuff that was mentioned, but in general, I do agree with Lejla and Janis that there is in general, lack of motivation. But I think that there is one particular aspect that I think that I should add is that there are several NCs that are not informed about the work of the councils, and therefore they cannot motivate members to participate in them. It is something that comes really from the member side, and only very active members in NCs do know about the possibilities that councils create and open for them. So I think that it should be a great priority of the GB to inform the national committees, or to put a lot of emphasis on making sure that their members know what councils are, know what their job is, and in order to as well recruit, if we could use that word, recruit members to participate in the councils. But I think that in general, yeah, the main problem is with remote work, and probably the answer goes to what Janis proposed, that is concentrating the work of the councils into more task force or similar structures. So more particularly based on something that needs to be done objective, get it out of the way, done, and not constantly repeating the same structures, such as the councils that always repeat on the same topics, whereas changing more based on the needs of the network in general. This is something that I've seen through my time in EYP Spain. In EYP Spain, we incorporated a very similar structure of councils, and we do see that councils some years tend not to be very interesting because there are no aspects to improve, or no members see that there are aspects to improve. However, moving on into more working group or task force structures, we do see that there is particular output being put forward, and I think that probably the structural change needs to be that.
Thank you. I will take one more question from the chat, and then we will have one final question before we end this this meeting. So how do you envision the GB's relationship with as a part of international governance and the communication between different bodies, for example, the International Office, the board of the BNC, and briefly on NCs we have discussed, but mainly on the international governance level. And also Nora wanted to specify, do you think that, for example, the International Office should have a role in terms of implementing the international strategy? So just to recap the question, so how do you see the relationship on international governance between GB, International Office, and the board of the BNC? And briefly on NCs, but we talked about them quite a lot thus far. And then just as a more detailed question, do you see that the International Office should have a role in implementing the international strategy, and what kind of role that should be? Unfortunately, I don't think we have a the International Office has a role in implementing the strategy, but what are your thoughts on the relationship on the GB monitoring the International Office work? Thank you, Maria, for correcting me on this. Just your answers to this, and I think this time we'll start with Lejla. So Lejla, when you're ready. I don't think we're hearing you, Lejla.
Do you
Now
hear
we're hearing you. Thank you.
I think when it comes to the relationship between the international office and the governing body, it should be work of communication and coordination. So I think that the international office has volunteers, has project managers, has people who are experienced. And I think this expertise should be put into support and should put into use to help the governing body on to steering the work of the entire network. Because I think they are able to provide such support in terms of their knowledge and experience. And I also think it's something that can be analyzed. I'm not really familiar with the current status in terms of what is the relationship and how the communication is between the governing body and the international office. But I think it definitely is an important link, and it has an important role for the entire organization.
Thank you. And then moving on to Iggy.
Yeah, so in general, as a main sort of headline of my answer to this question, it would be that the GB should always act as a bridge between the different participants in the international governance. So it should help the connection between the BNC and the international office in the different work, and also more precisely, obviously, between the international office and the different NCs. In particular, if we look at the international strategy, I'd say that the GB in this position, in this bridging position, could be the assisting in the gathering of information. So making sure that the international office is well informed about the different needs of the NCs in terms of the implementation of this strategy, and how the international strategy also coincides with the different objectives that the NCs have in their long-term national strategy. I hope that is not too short of an answer.
No, it's perfectly fine. And I just want to make clear that you're not expected to be any kind of experts on the inner workings of international governance, but just your ideas on these matters. And then finally, Janis.
So first on the IO, where I agree with what has been said is that yes, there's a lot of expertise. Our peers, former peers that work there already for years now, and obviously that's also that there are people who have certain perspectives and can provide a valuable input. So yes, there should be a good way of cooperating, though I think
Janis, the connection with you is quite bad. Maybe if you try without the video.
The potential of different that again. Okay, so while I said yes, there should be we should make use of the expertise that is in the IO, I think in the very end there is also the potential of different goals of the stakeholders, because the IO is part of a bigger organization, the Schwarzkopf Foundation, which is also running different other programs. So we cannot expect the IO and the foundation to always put everything in first priority how we would like to have it. So it's a way of also debating, discussing, or mostly discussing. It's not a debate, a competition, but it's there is need for discussing also with the foundation on how we should steer this organization. And I think the governing body should have a important role here to be kind of the advocate for the needs of the networks, for the needs of the members, in comparison to what other factors are out there in terms of financial aspects, in terms of organizational aspects. I think one aspect more to DIO is very important here, which are the working conditions. So it's very stressful, I think, for sometimes to work in DIO. They do a massive job. So while doing all these discussions, it's very important to have this in mind and to see what we can do as a network, as a GB, to support them wherever we can, while we still have our vision in mind. For the other stakeholders, I think everyone has maybe their kind of a corner where they're coming from, where they're looking at. And I think that's important, to just have different people looking from different perspectives, unless at some point we're kind of meeting on the bridge, sometimes more on the one side, sometimes more on the other side. And yeah, that would be my idea of working with the other bodies.
Thank you. And just to finish this meeting off, I just have one more question. So really quickly, let's go through. So what can you bring to the GB? What is the one or two main things that you could bring in to the GB? And this time, for the last round, we were starting with Iggy.
Okay, so there are two particular things that I think that I've learned throughout my time working that I would bring into the GB. One is the analytical perspective. So I think I've really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that the GB is well informed and that the GB has all of the information available in order to understand the heterogeneity of the national committees and how they implement the different projects and programs. So I think this analytical perspective is very important. And I think that it's probably my top thing that I would bring forward. And then in the end, I think that during my time working for the civil service here in the UK and also in Spain, and also during my time in EYP, I think that my main idea is to bring to the GB also the perspective of the public service and making sure that EYP works as a public service that is comprehensive and cohesive, and that it's also and that the work of the GB is also accountable and transparent, and that everybody can know and approach the members of the GB to know exactly what the GB is trying to do. So I think that those two things would be my main pillars. So analysis and delivery of a public service.
Thank you. And then Janis?
Yes. So the first thing for me would be the wish for being open and also leaving trodden paths behind, and asking, as I said, maybe questions on holy cows, be visionary. And the second part is bringing in perspectives from outside the EYP, from outside education background, other organizations that do educational work, as well as my freelance work in communication sector, etc. Just like, I think it helps a lot to just think of things from a different perspective as well, or just sometimes it's just the fact knowing, okay, maybe we can ask these people, or maybe we can check that source, and not always staying within our EYP bubble.
Thank you. And then to the final speaker, Lejla.
I think when it comes to what I could bring to the table, it would be my experience as working in an NGO sector in a country that's not developed and that is not part of the European Union. I think that there are many challenges that we face that are not so common for the European Union, especially in terms of that the NGO sector is not so popular and it's not really well understood. So I really do understand all of the challenges that a person or an organization basically faces through this process. And I think that the other thing that I would bring would be my creativity. I am always trying to find a new way to do things and to try to think outside of the box, to bring something fresh, new, interesting to the table, because we are young still and we are a youth organization. So I think it's one of an important aspects, always trying to create something that would be appealing to the youth.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the candidates. We have here 3 really good candidates with different set of skills. And I want to remind you that this meeting, the video will be up to the entire network. And there is still time and still possibilities to ask questions from the candidates. So on the members platform, you can go there. There's a channel where you can ask questions. I think Maria already has asked some questions. So make sure you go there to check the answers, and to the candidates that you go to really go there and remember to answer. I think Iggy, as of now, is the only one who has answered there. So I also hope to see Lejla's and Janis's answer there as soon as possible, and questions also from the NCs. Thank you to the GB members for fact checking me. and really thank you also to all the NC members for taking time from your busy schedules to join us. And I hope this opened up the visions of the candidates, and it was really nice to hear your really nice visions for EYP and its future. So good luck to the election, and I hope to see all NCs voting in these GP elections. But for now, I would like to say good night to all of you, and remember that all the candidates are available for more questions on members platform, and will also are probably open to answer questions also via direct messages on Facebook, for example, or on the International Governance Facebook page. So thank you and bye-bye.